Hey everybody, Greg Poole here at Junkie Media, bojunkie.com. It's time for another podcast. For those of you watching, you can see that it is becoming a familiar face to the program. For those of you listening, you will be picking up here relatively quick what's going on. But before we get started today, this podcast is kind of going to be formatted a little bit different. In the past, like you guys listen to me, I don't take notes. I don't generally write down questions. So there's nothing I can know ahead of time. Like there's some stuff that I want to talk about, but kind of my whole reason for even doing these podcasts is I just want to have dope conversations with cool people. And of course, today's guest is one of the coolest people I've ever met in the sport. I always enjoy our conversations, but today's podcast, and we just did a podcast a couple weeks ago, but because of the nature of what today's guest is actually running for, which is interesting considering his lifetime of accomplishments. But what I did was I basically put out a roll call. I was over in Europe talking to friends, and it's a hot topic over there, of course. A much more, let's just be honest, people, it's a much bigger topic, not in America than it is America, because it's America and it's how it goes. But make no mistake, people, what happens with World Archery does affect our manufacturers and our industries. It affects USA Archery. It affects the Olympics. It affects you, whether you're just a hunter and you don't care, it still affects you. So I would encourage you to, you don't have to tune into every piece of content you see about this topic, but pay attention to it because it is archery, and World Archery is a big part of what we're doing. And so I put out a roll call to a bunch of friends in a bunch of countries and got a pile of questions. Now, I've tried to kind of put these questions. I didn't put them in any particular order, but this is going to be a Q&A podcast. Whether I actually have any questions or follow-up questions to these questions remains to be seen. If history is any indication, probably. But but these questions are all originating from archers. I'm not going to say what archers and what countries because some of the questions, are relatively pointed. And so the the people who've provided these will remain anonymous just because I think that's the right thing to do. But they are all questions. I did have to print them all out because I can't remember them all. So I will be referencing questions from a piece of paper for, I don't do it often, but anyway, let's get started in this. This is going to be interesting. And I appreciate today's guest for taking the time to come on. It's Greg Easton, everybody. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing well, Greg. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Again, good to see you again. What's been, I would imagine that this whole president thing has been pretty time consuming and energy resource consuming. Am I right in that?
Yes, it is. Last couple weeks, not as much travel. It's kicking back up again next week. So that's been nice to be in one place for a while here. But yeah, it's taken a lot of time, a lot of focus. Fortunately, I've had some success over my career of putting good teams together and letting them do the job. So they take care of a lot of the operational stuff for me. So that gives me a little bit of space to be able to do this and appreciate that, and a lot of support from the family, and then really an incredible amount of support from other people on my team and a lot of people who aren't formally on the team but sure wanted to help out and kind of promote this how they could. So I appreciate all that help from around the world.
Absolutely. So let's just jump into this, man. Like I said, folks, these are in no particular order.
Are
Um,
these multiple choice, true or false? What kind of questions? What do
well,
we got here?
that's pretty clever. I wish I'd have thought of that. I'm a little jealous. Not gonna lie. That was
I'm
pretty
ready
good.
for you.
Right. All right. First question. Will Greg move the World Archery headquarters? Basically meaning, for those of you that don't know, the World Archery headquarters is over in Europe. And so, Greg,
Yep.
that's the first question. It was asked by several people. Is they
Oh,
think because you're an American, if you win this, you'll relocate headquarters. What do you got?
no, I understand the question. Yeah, World Archery is in Lausanne, Switzerland, the Olympic city. That's where the IOC is based. A lot of sports are based there. Not all of them, but a lot of sports are based there. Really, to think, not think, to stay connected with and in the melee of the IOC world. That's where most of the funding comes from for most sports is from the IOC, and the idea is it comes to the federations, and then they can use it to develop their sport and create a better sport for the Olympic program going forward. So no, long answer is no, I won't be moving the office. Again, my intention would be to make sure we got the right team in place, making good decisions and be able to, not obviously manage it remotely, but be over there when needed and at regular intervals to kind of not manage the office, but kind of make sure the culture and the services we're providing to our member associations stay up to the standards I think they should be.
There you go. One down, a bunch to go. Okay. Having shot events himself, what format changes would Greg like to see from a competitor standpoint and as someone who can influence said changes? For example, the X is the 11, changing compound distance, shooter qualification with matches, perhaps via round robin style like they used to shoot, or any other changes he think would help improve the game.
Yes. I'm open for and all about change. I mean, I think every country I've spoken to over 100, probably getting close to 110 countries so far, and a lot of them are all about we need some change, we need some differences in world archery, and obviously that comes down to our events and even and the event itself, and then the competition going on at that event. So I am open for those. I think a sport needs to continue to uh, progress as it can and stay relevant. And so, yes, I'm open for all those kind of changes. I don't have all the ideas, but I am committed to getting the right people in the room and say, look, let's brainstorm this and what should we change and why and what are we trying to accomplish? I know they did the 60 euro round in Antalya and the 11 without a lot of understanding of, okay, what are we trying to accomplish? So it's hard to get feedback from people that's relevant if you don't know what you're exactly trying to accomplish. So I think there's our room for changes, and how we do that is there's also other events you can try things at that aren't a World Cup stage, aren't a world ranking event, that type of thing for the athletes, so you can still test things out. And so yeah, we would again, I don't have a bunch of changes in my back pocket that I'm going to throw out the first day, but I've got some ideas of how we could do that. I think the events themselves, the length of the event, ranking round versus a round robin pool play thing, I think has some benefits, has some that benefits from both pr promoting the event and from the athlete standpoint of maybe having more practice at a that elimination competition rather than just a round robin and then maybe one elimination and then they're going home.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So here comes the 800-pound gorilla in the corner question, which will be of no surprise. I can tell you this. The question is about, will you support increased inclusion and participation of compound archery in the Olympics beyond LA 2028?
Yes, it's that is a hot, not a hot topic, but an interesting topic. When the idea of compound in the Olympics first came up, I first heard about it probably 10 years ago, literally. I think they've been working on it longer than that, actually. One thing it points out is this cycle to make changes is long in the Olympic program, right? Things take a long time to get approved, and then another, 4 years before we get it implemented at the games type of thing. So a long cycle. But one of the first things I said was, interesting idea. I always worry about what's the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish? And then what are the potential unintended consequences, right? What else could happen that like, oh, that wasn't ideal. I think we ended up getting compound in the Olympics not the way that it was first proposed, which was a separate event in the next week at an indoor venue, which I thought had some positives to it. But that required additional athletes, and for the IOC program, that's a hard stop from the beginning for every sport. Trying to think, oh, we're going to talk our way into getting more athletes, I think is is not realistic. So going forward, yeah, it'll be good to see what happens from compound at the Olympics. I don't, World Archery says, we'll evaluate it afterwards. I'm not sure what that metric is, so that'll be good to learn once I get in there as president. Okay, what are we hoping for from compound? And over time, I think there can be ways to increase the presence there of compound and maybe even the medal count without much impact on the total number of archers and, the recurve program. So trying to find that way to continue to promote compound without having too big of a negative impact on the recurve participation, because recurves, they've been at it the whole time and they've been in the Olympics, and they're, I think what, the general public, when they think of archery, maybe, recognizes both styles of bows, but the recurve as the more traditional version of it. I guess
Absolutely.
a long answer to yes, I think there's still some opportunities there. Just needs to be planned out well and minimize the impacts.
So you absolutely support more inclusion of compounds in the Olympics. You're just saying that there's a framework. We have to work within that framework, and we don't want to, rush to do one thing at the overall expense of another.
Yes, yes, yeah,
Perfect.
that's exactly right.
So trying to find this other question. It's a long list, folks. Don't judge me. Um, I don't remember. I don't see it right now, but basically a follow-up question to that, which was based on a question that's on here that I'll skip when I actually find it, was and this was a question from an archer. What do you think is what's more important in Greg's opinion to the overall growth and exposure of the sport? More archery medals at the Olympics or more singular participants at the Olympics? I think so. The reason I'm jumping ahead to ask that because that's kind of a follow up question to what you just said. So,
Mhm.
but someone had literally asked, in your opinion, which is better for the sport, more medal count for archery at the Olympics, or more athletes in one discipline at the Olympics?
Yeah, no, I think I understand the question. I think the point to bring up that about that is that if you think about the archery in the Olympics, if one of our top objectives is let's make sure we stay in the Olympic program, then you back up, okay, how does that happen? Well, that's a vote of the IOC members. So having um, a lot of countries competing is important, because if I'm an IOC member and my country competes and every once in a while we do okay, when the vote comes up, maybe I'm voting yes. Whereas if I have no archery, maybe I'm less likely to vote yes for the sport.
Good
So
point.
there's the value there. The other side of that is the medals itself, is that if there's more available, they're likely to be won by more countries, which has the same impact. Right now, I won a medal at the last games. I really want to keep archery in the games.
Right.
So they're kind of almost in our situation, almost competing situations. I think there are some ways to help begin increasing medal count without reducing the number of countries that show up, that make the qualifying for the recurve or for the compound.
Sure. Well, folks, at least Greg just didn't say, yeah, shoot better. So there is that. More more medals happens when you shoot better. So the next question actually falls right in line with that. Team event structure. Some in the sport believe simplifying team events to only men's, women's, and mixed pairs could reduce complexity, cut costs, and make events more appealing to broadcasters. What is your view on this format change?
I've heard other suggestions about format changes. For example, taking the current team from three to two has some advantages from overall athlete standpoint, has some advantages of some countries. It's harder for them to come up with three good enough athletes, but they might have two. So there's some advantages to basically making the two team rounds kind of similar, whether they're gender mixed or not gender mixed. Um, so I hadn't thought about kind of eliminating the team round altogether. I think there's some. I like the team round from the dynamics that happen there, even just the movement of the archers. I think there's more for people to watch. So if you're talking about the completely uninitiated viewer that might be watching the Olympics, I think the team round has some value, and I think for sure the mixed team round has some usefulness from a standpoint of showing that the a sport that can compete with, both genders compete together on a team.
Sure. And folks, look, y'all know me. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't shoot the fetus stuff. I don't, but I will comment about that question that I just asked Greg is I still kind of want to see the male Korean team face the American male recurve team, if I'm being 100% honest. That's been one of the legendary battles since I've been paying attention. So I'm not saying it's a plus or a minus. I'm just saying that I don't have a dog in the fight, but seeing those countries battle it out sometime in the full blown team events has been pretty exciting as well. Um, Indoor round changes. Basically, the question was many years ago when a Jesse Broadwater someone would drop a 599, the world would stop spinning and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" Well, now 599 is good round, dude. Why'd you miss one? And so 600s have become much more prevalent. What would your thought be on Lancaster bonus ring during matches, different smaller target faces or color changes, basically anything to kind of spruce up the indoor round?
Yeah. I think it's goes back to the whole idea about change. I think there's a lot of opportunities. I know, for example, there are some other shooting and accuracy sports that are fighting this right now, right? They've everything's gotten so close to perfect, it's hard to distinguish and just makes it kind of harder to run the sport. So I think if you think about it, with advances in technology and other things we've got as the accuracy and the athletes from training and everything they're doing gets better, you at some point you need to start looking at the sport itself. I know golf does the same thing. A lot of sports say, hey, how do we keep our sport relevant if everybody's making perfect? So I think changes are needed and trying to figure out the right ways to try them. Years ago, I wasn't there, but I remember hearing about that they tried a hit and miss target at I don't think it was a World Cup, but it was some event in Lausanne. Um, Hit and miss target, and the problem was it was windy,
Right.
and so it was miss, miss, miss. Sitting there in the stand, it's like, wait a minute, I thought these are the best guys in the world, so why is everybody missing? So you got to figure out how to balance that. You don't want to take us back to look like we don't know what we're doing, but
Fair
somebody
point.
else I think asked, or I mean, I've heard questions about, the 11. 11 was interesting, and in Italia, I was there. It was interesting because you could hear people being a bit excited about an 11 because it was new and unique and was more unique than just a 10. I'm not sure 11 is the right number, but the idea of making it a little more, let's just say a little more difficult.
Right.
And so you don't have 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, over and over and over again.
Right.
It's the opposite of hearing miss, miss, miss too often. That doesn't look good either. So you try to find that balance between
Right.
change the target, if you're talking compound, change the target. And I'm sure they've thought about this. I just don't know why they ended up with 11 versus changing the target or to changing the distance or doing something so that there's just a few less tens would then make that 10 more valuable and interesting. And as you said, get everybody back from being so close to perfect and to the point of if you're not perfect, you're like, oh, what's wrong with you?
Right. Right.
Perfect needs to be more unique.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. While Greg is not widely considered a media guy, he will have great influence there. How would he like to see World Archery present the sport more dynamically and tell the story of events better?
Hmm. I actually have a lot of ideas there. Not all mine. I mean, from other folks. Some of my best ones I'm actually not going to share. After the election, I'll tell you all about them. But I don't want them to become somebody else's idea.
Our our post victory podcast will be fire. Go ahead.
Yes. So yeah, I think in the grand scheme, I think World Archery. I think we can promote or at least televise the event better. Um, the quality of the television, the production we make is fantastic. I would give them a lot of credit for the quality of it.
Agreed.
Just don't know that it has the sticking power, the attention grabbing part of it. So look for ways to help enhance that. And so I think the short answer is yes, but that's all. I don't want to share anymore right now.
Understood. Understood. And we kind of hit on this briefly, but now that World Indoor Series doesn't have a final, talking about Vegas, will the Indoor World Championships start again?
Uh, it kind of replace the indoor World Series. I don't know that I haven't made that decision. I don't think that decision's been made in general. I think the indoor World Series has a good place. It has a lot of interest done right, and it can be done. It is done well, and figuring out how to refit the finals in there. I think there was some other circumstances that kind of made them decide to get rid of the finals. I think there's ways we can either bring it back or at least keep the indoor World Series running.
Okay. When does World Archery start working on the 2032 Olympics in Australia?
Uh, my short answer is they already have, I'm sure, right? It's
Okay.
less, is it about 5 years off now? So yes, there's already discussions. There's a lot of negotiations that go on. There's a contract that's struck between the organizer and the federations, and so of what they're providing and what the federations need. So I'm sure a lot of that's going on already, and hard work to figure it, try
Okay.
to get the sport the best venue we can and all the support we need.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that question was going to be it wasn't followed up on by the person, but I'm pretty sure what they were wondering is about compounds and
Oh,
Australia. So, but they didn't ask it, so I'm not going to ask it. All right, moving on. Shorter duration and less expensive World Cups for archers and event hosts. National level archery competitions are often very long, which can make them less appealing for young archers and their parents, even if they're not resource heavy. Do you see potential for shorter, more engaging formats at both the grassroots and elite levels? And how might World Archery support such changes?
let's see. Starting maybe from the end there, how would we support? I think if you're going to want the nationals to change maybe how they run, a lot of them will follow what World Archery is doing. So I think it would probably start at World Archery level of, okay, are we going to run our events differently to shorten them up some? And yes, that is a very common concern I hear. I probably it's not news to anybody in the archery world about the events and the cost and the length of time. And so yes, I think there are some ideas around that of how do you make the events more relevant. They're expensive, so how do you manage that? You also don't want to make them, even if you make them a little less expensive, and then shorter means people shoot a lot less. Well, that's not very attractive either. They don't want to travel all that way and not shoot much. So
Right.
you've got a lot of competing forces there, but I think there's ways to accomplish that. Again, I don't have them all, and I don't pretend to have all the ideas. I think it's really getting the right people together and saying, look, here's what we want to accomplish. Let's come up with some ideas. Let's beat them around and figure out how to make better ideas out of what each one person comes up with, and then go implement it, test it in the right places, and figure out if it has the desired impact.
There you
Um,
go. So I don't know your involvement at this level with World Archery from the past, but I'll ask the question. If this is not something that you know, you're just welcome to say so. Is World Archery not making enough funds to, I just copied and pasted these people.
oh,
Is World Archery not making enough funds to not force athletes to pay so much themselves? That sounds like a profitability question. Like,
yeah, no, I think I know more from a standpoint of being an organizer. So
okay,
as an organizer, it's really between the fees. There's a fee that goes to World Archery. There's expenses that are the requirements that are required by World Archery for running the event. Those add up and add up quick, and they add up well in excess of the registration fees. And in my case, and I think most countries, well in excess of what you can add to the hotel room. As we know, that's become kind of a bigger and bigger thing of people adding more and more to the hotel rooms.
right,
It's just a cover cost. None of these organizers are making any money. So it's a simple equation of the events cost a lot to put on, and the income is pretty limited that an organizer is able to get.
right, all
I
right,
mean,
yeah,
even trying to be able to sell local sponsors, we can't sell any sponsors on the field of play because World Archery's already sold those, which I kind of get.
right,
So local sponsors like, okay, you got a few hundred people for a few days watching an event. That's not worth, you know, me
right.
giving you money to sponsor it, or here, I'll give you $5,000. That's not the kind of hole we're talking about. We need to dig out of a much bigger hole than that.
Right. Well, and I mean, I hadn't really thought of that. But now that you bring it up, I mean, and you're right. You're not going to get, Jim's Automotive Warehouse on a flag next to Easton downrange at a World Cup. But perhaps you could consider, or whomever could consider, like a certain area that gets some exposure that is designated for local uh advertising that still gets some run on the broadcast and stuff. It's just not prime time placement. But that's just something I just threw out there on my own. Okay. Will Greg look at increased prize money for World Cups, either more podiums? I think they meant more money for people on the podium, or deeper payouts. Building global archery stars per se will make more up and comers want to do archery. If World Cups are a premier event, they should pay premier purses.
Yes. Love to do that. Again, it's a dollars and cents and where the money's coming from. And so that's a big area that will be of focus. I know some of it already, but get more details of okay, where I know most of our revenue sources, and I know where some of the money's going to say, hey, where are we spending our money and is it the right place? And so yeah, if there was money laying around, I think that's a good place for it.
Right. Sure. Yeah, that's fair. Um, I thought this one was kind of interesting. Does Greg think World Archery needs a pro designation? If not, why not? If pros can play in the Olympic Games already anyway? Because I
Yeah.
mean, when that one came in, I was like, well, they're right, because there's only pros in America. There is no pro in anywhere else. So,
Yeah. And that's a good, I don't know if it needs it. Maybe there may be an aspect of it that's useful for, allowing people to be designated or designate themselves as a pro athlete. So I'd say I don't know the ins and outs of that.
yeah.
Why you need to do that.
Well, I mean, so for me, the first thing that it made me think about is back to the marketing and promotion of the events. And if they're premier and they're going to start paying more, if you could, trying to figure out the best way to phrase this, if you designated that level of athlete in world archery as a pro as well, would it offer validity globally to the sport of archery as pros per se, like every other, sport has, while also still allowing countries to participate and individuals to participate in that regard? So basically, you know, in the context of trying to promote the sport and trying to get world archery out there to more people, just being able to say these are pros to, the rest of the world, kind of puts those athletes on a higher level by
Yeah,
title.
it's not just the best athletes from around the world, it's the best professional athletes from around the world.
Exactly.
Yeah, I could see it. I just don't know when they really hang that name on it. I mean, I guess in the old days it was you got paid to be the athlete
Right.
and you could win money, right? And today it's a little more vague on what that pro designate. I mean, there's very few athletes that are getting paid to be an athlete around the world that you qualify as being professional. So you'd have to redefine what's professional mean. You've won enough, maybe you've won enough money in your career, and then we designate you as a professional. I don't know. So we'd
Yeah.
have to
I
think
mean,
about that.
yeah, I mean, and I thought it was really interesting. And to me, it's just more about the marketing and promotion of the sport. So
Yeah.
that when someone, because when someone who doesn't understand these nuances sees um, Vegas, for instance, and they see the championship open winner versus when they see the NFAA Indoor Nationals and they see the men's pro winner. So just I look at it as more of a marketing and promotion thing for the actual sport itself, but I thought it was a pretty good question. Uh,
Yeah.
should the World Archery Executive Board be more active and offer critical input, or just follow the office's wishes? I don't even know what that means, to be honest, but go ahead.
I just kind of like it's an interesting question from somebody. I think I'll answer it differently from a standpoint of when the boards I've sit on, when I get the most value is when you feel the most valued, you're given the most input, you're hopefully being listened to. Not that they always agree with me. And so I think any high functioning board should have people, that's what they should be there for, have input all the way to the point of what's good about some boards is the board can elect other board members when they decide, here's our big challenge. We need someone who's an expert in
Oh,
professional sports, what we just talked about. We need someone who's an expert in that area. Let's find them and get them on our board to help us with this issue. So there's ways to do that. So I think I'm not maybe not specifically, but boards I sit on, I want that input. I think that's why people are there. If you're not giving your input, we're kind of wasting everybody's time, I think. So
right.
short answer is my board in World Archery would be, hey, I need your input. I need your thoughts on this. Make sure we're coming up with the best solution for things.
Right. So in that sentence, I don't know this, folks. I'm ignorant on this, but can you explain what they mean? Because they kind of differentiate um the the board, or yeah, the executives from the office. So they're kind of segregating the executive board versus the office's wishes. What are they talking about there between the executive board and the office's wishes? Because they're
Uh,
making it sound like they're not the same.
yeah, I guess I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what they're talking about. I think like I said, on some boards, if you're just really there because they need a board of directors, it's more of a check the box.
Oh,
They may come in with a lot of the decisions, if you will, made. And
okay,
so, hey, we've researched this issue. Here's the change we want to make. Doesn't that look great to everybody? Yes. And so I'm not saying that's exactly what's always gone on at the World Archery Board per se, but I
right,
think that's what they're referring to is
okay,
things are decided before the board meeting. So therefore, you're really just following what the organization wants to do.
understood. Okay, I'm gonna skip down a couple because this one's kind of related to that. How will Greg better utilize the athlete committee? They don't really listen to us at all.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. It's apparently from somebody on the athletes committee, and I've heard that comment. I mean, I haven't lived that or experienced that, but I think it's really comes down to what I've committed all the way through my campaign, and I'm talking to people is I want to listen. I mean, it's what of the 110 countries. I mean, I really try to get them to talk and tell me what's going on in your country and what are your challenges, and listening and trying to learn about that. I learn a lot on every call. And yes, to have a committee that really feels like they're not being listened to is not a useful use of the committee. So trying to make sure we're listening and having those discussions of they may come up and say, hey, this is really how we feel and we feel strongly about that. And then have the dialogue of, yeah, we understand and we're going to figure that out. Or I hear your problem, but we can't do anything about it today. Having
Yeah.
at least having that face-to-face discussion about where we're going.
Okay. Perfect. Um, someone says thoughts on the India League. So I saw
Uh,
that in India just launched a league.
I think he's calling it the Super League.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard about it when I've heard about it a couple of times, but when we were in I'm trying to think. I was in Madrid. We were also talking about it. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting idea, right? I mean, the for people who don't know about it, it's basically a professional league, if you will, where w- the format will be athletes from India and from around the world on mixed gender and mixed equipment teams. So compound and recurve on the same team together, if you will,
Okay.
with the whole concept of sponsors for the team. So some company, some organization wants to own a team, like think professional sports, right?
Yep.
Sponsor from the team. And he's seen this work in other sports, really thinks he can create a dynamic, interesting model that people are going to want to attend to watch, that they can get television exposure and basically make it a financially viable for everybody involved. The athletes get paid well, sponsor can make some of the money back through the exposure they get as a sponsor. And then the next year if they don't want to, someone else could buy their team from them. So you make some money on that. So it's a whole, think about a professional league here in the US. It's sort of modeled after that.
Hmm.
So I think it's pretty exciting. And I would want to see World Archery. stay involved from a standpoint of you want to understand where that is. You don't want to create a lot of conflicts with regard to scheduling and that sort of thing, which is already incredibly tight,
Right.
and figure out how to make that work, and then see if it's uh, is it exportable if it really is that successful.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, it's almost as though you were reading my mind on the next question, and you brought up schedule. So the very next question, folks, I'm not even jumping ahead here. Greg is obviously psychic. There is no break in archery anymore. We used to get a couple months off, but now they run indoor events then. Too many events, too much stress on manufacturers to pay for little to no REI, and top archers are getting burnout. Every sport has a break. I, I mean, I was never a worldwide FIDA guy, but they're not wrong is the fact that we did use archers did kind of, and I don't mean archers like me, people. I don't
Yeah.
count. We're talking about the hardcore touring global pros. There did used to be a couple month break, but it seems like that's kind of went away.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, guess I would assume just sort of under the expansion of events, there's more events, and I want to have my own regional competition or championship, whatever I want to have to try to grow archery in my country and my region. And yeah, it's a good point. And archers are, I think a lot of these high level teams and the pros are pros, I'll use that term, but the guys on these teams are they need to shoot the other events because it's how the world ranking kind of is across a number of the disciplines. And no, it brings a good point. I mean, you don't want to wear out your athletes. You don't want to have injuries because they're working or working too hard or too consistently. So I think I'd have to put it on my list of, yeah, that's to be considered because it's a good point. I don't know if even World Archery said, okay, we're not going to host any of our events. Here's our end of our
Yes.
outdoor season, and here's the ending of the beginning season. It doesn't prevent somebody else from having events that may still tap some of those same archers.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, I like this question. Um, and I think, what you said is true, but like every other sport does have a quote unquote season. And so I don't think necessarily the question is revolving around regional or mid-level events. I think, and they did mention manufacturers, which I was happy to hear. And so with, what we will consider mainline tier one events, World Cups, Indoor World Series, all the NFAA stuff, et cetera, Nemes, Kings of Archery, Lancasters, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so I guess for me, the question off of that question is with us not having necessarily a break, obviously we're seeing a lot of top archers choosing not to go to some stuff because quite frankly, they're just burnt out. But on the other side of that, which you should have a little bit of experience with this, Easton does sponsor some people here and there. Um, the contingency. I mean, companies are compelled to pay contingency for all of these events, and when the top shooters aren't going to some of these events, or at least not very many of them, are those contingency dollars paid actually a good return on investment for that company?
well, yeah, I mean the less, yeah, I say the short answer to that one is yes. You'd have to, I think everybody evaluates their contingency dollars probably every year. How much are we going to pay and at which events? So yes, you that would be the evaluation. Um, so yeah, I think again, it's a good point, but even from a world archery standpoint, even if we had more of its, and I know we have some of break, but more from between our events, we don't control where NFA puts their events or where Lancaster or anybody else puts their events. So that in today's calendar, I think the challenge is you leave a blank period, someone's going to put something there because, hey, that's a great weekend. There's no other event. I'm going to put mine there to try to attract the most people.
Sure, absolutely. All right, next one. Will Greg commit to athlete safety as it pertains to heat and set a max allowable heat? An archer's life was altered in 2022, and at this weekend's World Games, an athlete from another sport died in the 118.5-degree heat while running. Food and electrolytes were lacking, and the World Archery staff disregarded the event's local advice to run the shoot later in the day. Archers had to shoot in the hottest part of the day in direct sunlight to facilitate TV broadcasts. I don't know about either of those scenarios, but there you have it.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I think the short answer is we need to have an outlook, and if we don't, I'm not sure why not have a cutoff point. My understanding is USA Archery has one, a heat index. I think they say, look, if it's over this much humid and over this much heat, we just don't compete. It's too hot to be standing out there that long.
Correct.
Um, so yes, and then yeah, okay, how does that impact TV or whatever else you're doing? I think it comes down to that whole rethinking the events. I believe TV has a lot of influence on what we are doing, not just whether we're shooting through the heat or not.
Right.
And gotta determine. I'm not. It's not going to come out right, but determine, is that really valuable? I'm going to make the hard stop there to say, even if it's a TV event and it's too hot, we've got to, if that's a contract we've written, we've got to write a different contract of like, look, our sport, I mean, golf knows there's delays. If there's lightning, they
Yep.
don't play golf,
Yep.
right? If there's lightning, we can't shoot our bows. Can't shoot our bows if there's lightning.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some understanding of that kind of why heat isn't sort of in the same category as lightning. It's unsafe for our athletes. We can't compete.
Common sense prevails. I'm with that. Well, I mean, you're right. I mean, and I'm not familiar with either of those two events, but what you just said absolutely is spot on. So I got nothing for that. Okay. Physical and mental conditioning in archery, high performance archery requires not only shooting thousands of arrows, but also maintaining peak physical and mental fitness. Yet, this aspect isn't heavily promoted at the international level. How do you see World Archery encouraging member associations, starting from grassroots, to integrate structured physical conditioning and mental training into their athlete development pathways so parents and young archers understand its importance early on? That's a good question.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking about that a little bit. So it's not just, so it's not a question about promoting the fact that our athletes have to be in top mental and physical shape. They're not talking about that. They're talking about developing archers. I think World Archery can kind of promote, again, the federations, they're their own entity, right? They're affiliated with the federation, but they're not under our control. They follow our competition rules, but otherwise they have a lot of free reign to do how they want to run their federation. So
Right.
perhaps just the idea of, hey, promoting it in today's environment, it's not just shooting hundreds and hundreds of arrows every day, because if you're not doing physical training to support that, then you're going to end up with injuries.
Right.
I think educating, promoting, it's something a lot of countries ask for it falls under the umbrella of development in the world archery arena. You know, support us in the ways we need to be supported. And some of it is education, right? It's coaching education. And there would be a good uh, module there, if it doesn't already exist, but a module there about physical and mental training of your athletes, and even from a young age, right? Don't just
Right.
shoot bows and arrows, but you need to exercise.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, they're not wrong. Anything World Archery could do to, help foster and support to downstream federations a more, and I don't even want to say healthy, a more, a lifestyle that is going to allow archers to not only perform at their highest level, but not be wrecked when they're done.
Yeah.
Like, I
Well,
know lots.
yeah, wrecked physically or mentally. We saw that in gymnastics, right? We had some athletes who were stepped out mentally. So
Yep, exactly right.
both sides of yep.
All right, let's see here. Will Paralympics continue to remain a priority for World Archery under Greg's leadership?
Well, yeah, I mean, short answer is yes. I think the para program has an important place in our sport. We have a really unique sport from the standpoint of the equality, if you will, of the competition, of how well a lot of para athletes can do and compete with us side by side. So want to continue to support the para athletes, and yeah, keep that program. I know it's having a lot of growth. There's a lot of challenges with the IPC, the Paralympic Committee, and the International Paralympic Committee, and kind of rules and things they pass down, which sometimes makes the life on the ground harder and just try to figure out how do we best implement those to stay attuned with the right rules, but also running a program that can keep growing.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I thought the Paralympics at the last games when Matt Stutzman won gold, by the way, America.
Yeah.
I thought that was spectacular to watch. And the Paralympics are entertaining just as much as the regular Olympics. I don't know if regular is the right word, but everyone knows what I'm saying. But no, I think watching the Paralympic Games is fun as well. Will Greg address World Archery staffing level issues? I don't necessarily know what that means, but I will assume it either means World Archery has too many or too few employees, and I don't know the difference. I don't know what it is.
So the short answer is yeah, yes. When you take over an organization like this, first thing you got to do is talk, work with the people that are there to say, okay, here's the new vision, the new culture we'll have, how we're going to be customer service oriented, et cetera. Are you in? First of all, do you want to play in this new game, new world we've got, which would be a first step, and then evaluate, their contribution, their skills, and how well they're doing. So I think there are a lot of good people at World Archery that are skilled in what they're doing. I think they can work better together and be more collaborative. So look forward to making those kind of changes. And then see, yeah, if you've got too many people or too few resources in one area or another, you have to realign them. So I don't I don't have any plans to do that now because I don't know all the details yet, but
Sure.
yes.
Do, do you know if they meant too many or too few? I'm like curious now. I'm like, does
Uh,
Tree have too many employees or too few employees?
I think they might think too many, but the challenging thing is if you just look at sort of a head count, is not all of those are full time. Some are either consultants and they're half time or even less. So when you count the number of people and you think they're full-time equivalents, it probably looks pretty heavy. When you do the math and say, well, we're only paying the guy about half a salary because he's got other things he's doing, he's a contractor almost, or is a
Sure.
contractor, then it levels out quite a bit, I think.
And I don't have any context to know if they were talking about at the executive level, at the shooting center. I don't have any context, so I was just curious. All right. Supporting smaller federations. Many smaller federations struggle to send athletes to major events due to cost and scheduling challenges. How would you ensure these countries remain competitive and included in the international circuit?
Uh, Good question. Heard that from a lot of the smaller developing countries I talk to. So, as you said, the um, schedule is the conflict. The finances for a lot of them, the conflict. They just don't have financing from their government in any form, so they don't even have the money to send athletes. So, yeah, through our development efforts that I want to reinvigorate in World Archery would be to figure out what those countries need and how to support them.
Right.
Some countries need recognition at a regional or World Cup event to take back to their country. So having the idea of they're not going to go win a medal at their first World Cup likely.
Right.
Is there a way to have a, if you will, an overlay over the World Cup that says these are all the countries we consider developing countries because of their size or how many events they've been to or whatever it is, and award some medals for that group. So then they can go back and say, hey, of our peer group, we did the best. That might pry some dollars out of their National Olympic committees to support them a little bit and let them continue to kind of get off the ground, if you will, from a standpoint of getting their federation started. So I think there's ways to do that for the developing countries and just other ways to help them from a development standpoint of what do they need. Some have real equipment problems, some don't have any coaches, and just figure out what they need and how can we put together events that are more regionally focused too, again for cost, so that easy for them to get to, easy for them to get the skills they need and go back to their federation and try to keep them progressing.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that much, but you're right. A developmental um, award or a developmental medal for countries like that would probably go a long way. That's a
Yeah.
pretty good idea. Um, okay, balancing innovation with tradition. You've spoken about innovation, including digital tools and new formats. How will you balance the need to modernize and attract new audiences with preserving the traditions that longtime athletes and coaches value? Somebody put some thought into that question.
Yeah, no, it's some of the ideas digitally I had with just how to make it a little more engaging for the people that are there watching, and even if people for that matter streaming, or watching it at home. Um, Seems to me there are some things that aren't all that expensive that would allow some more engagement and flexibility there without going into details of the random ideas I had there sitting at an event going, this could be done better.
Right.
Tradition and where we've been is a big issue, and I don't downplay that. But sometimes changes are needed, and not to pull out the dad card, but when my dad was in World Archery and was forced with, now this wasn't something he had coming in, it came up over his tenure, was archery will be out of the Olympic program if you don't change it. That was the comment from the IOC president.
Oh,
Back then we were shooting the feet around, which was 64 men and 64 women shooting on a giant field, and you cannot televise that. You can't
right.
promote it. There's really nothing to watch. At the end, they take a long time to add up the score and then say who won the gold medal. The Olympic round was not embraced by anybody, my understanding, starting out, right?
Right.
Athletes didn't like it, coaches didn't like it, nobody liked it, but we felt for the survival of the sport in the Olympic program, that kind of change needed to happen. I don't imagine anything that dramatic out there, but I think it's trying to say, look, we need to respect the past and our history and the traditions, and also look for what do we need to do to advance. So kind of a middle of the road answer in that if we just say we're always going to do the things we always have done, we would have been out of the Olympics 30 years ago.
Well, that's a good piece of information to have. I did not know that. So probably that one was good.
Yeah.
And I mean, I understand the question, especially with the challenges that we're talking about with, people shooting damn near perfect all the time. And, how do you do that while also, like you said, honoring the tradition that athletes and coaches, I mean, it's a good question. So that's going to be a good one for you to navigate. So, speaking of the production and the distribution of this product being World Archery, folks, Greg and I could do a whole nother podcast on the plethora of archery products, but this one we're going to keep to World Archery. And so, Greg, I don't know if you follow the UFC at all, if you're into ultimate fighting, but the UFC, the premier, it's the top, it's the NFL, it's the Major League Baseball of mixed martial arts. They just signed a new deal with Paramount and CBS. And starting next year, there's no more pay-per-views. So the cost of being an MMA fan went from, like, if you watched all the events, it was about $1,400 a year, to now it's going to be like 15 just to be, if unless you already have Paramount and CBS,
Yeah.
then it's going to be free. And so the idea of pay-per-views and paywalls are, they were hot for a minute, but what I'm seeing from other events is they're actually other sports is they're kind of transitioning away from those. So with the fact that we have went from, and I mean, look, YouTube revenue is a real thing. Ask Mr. Beast or
Mhm.
any of these Whistling Diesel or any of these, YouTubers that are making crazy loads of money. So World Archery events used to be for free on YouTube, and then of course clips on other things as well. But they have since went to an Archery TV Plus paywall format.
Mhm.
No recent events issues withstanding, we will assume that if everything's operating as intended and everybody can watch accordingly, what are your thoughts on continuing to put what is unfortunately still a niche sport behind a paywall?
Yeah. And I have a lot of thoughts about it. I mean, some of it needs a little more research when I get into World Archery. But yeah, I heard a lot of people talking about Archery TV Plus and the fact that they used to watch and they don't anymore. And I
Right.
thought, well, that's unfortunate. Why would that happen? Or, no, why would that happen? Why would we take an audience we've got and push it away. Uh, over the years being in archery, I remember even talking to dealers, right, who would say, "Oh, I love giving away free classes, and if somebody comes in with a bow they bought someplace else, I just fix it because I just love archery so much." I'm like, "Well, that's great, but if you keep giving it away, what value does it have?"
Right.
Um, so I don't know if that was kind of the thought of, well, these people value archery, they should pay for it because then it'll be more valuable for them. Other aspect was probably if you're trying to sell a signal to China or some other country and you're giving it away on YouTube, then you lose the you lose the support of the person paying for it. So I think for archery, it's more important that we embrace the fan base we have and say, how do we make a product that's they want to watch, get more people watching it, and then figure out how do we create, as we talked about before, the televised version of it that's also desirable and consumable by people. I'm
Right.
sure the way MMA worked out is there were probably a lot of people doing the pay per view, so they have a lot of people watching. I mean, that's how these sports work. They had a lot of people watching, and then the sponsor, the television, to Paramount and CBS said, "We're going to pay you a lot of money
Right.
to pick up your signal,
Right.
and therefore you don't need to do, you don't have to do the pay-per-view anymore."
Correct.
Other sports, I know some sports, fencing just did a big change where they're starting to promote and give away their broadcasts because I think they want trying to get more people watching. And that's the name of the game. I was sitting someplace and saw some bowling on the TV and was watching it for a little bit, and it's a lot like archery. The camera angles,
Right.
bowler, bowling, pins falling down.
Right.
Same three angles we have: archer,
Yep.
arrow going off, target. But why is this on TV? Why is there now there wasn't a tiny crowd there. They make it look like more people, but tiny crowd there. Well, it's because there's like 10 million bowlers in the US. And
Right.
people watch bowling, and that's why they have sponsors and they can get television coverage.
Right.
Um, we don't have that many archers. We got to think about a different way to do it.
Right.
But
So
put it behind a paywall, I don't think had the desired impact.
yeah, well, that's 100% agree on that. And so I guess my follow-up to that is, or I suppose one of my arguments, not that we're in a debate here, of course, but is that if the idea for you in World Archery is to bring in new people, there is not in my opinion, there is not one single new person to archery who's going to pay to watch it. Like people like you and me who are diehard in this, yes, but someone who is new to the sport is not going to stumble upon archery and pay to watch it. And so if we're trying to bring in, and that's the other point, 100 million people watch the Super Bowl. How many of those 100 million actually play football?
Yeah,
Not many.
right.
And so the paywall for me, I think, kind of paints us into a corner where we're not going to get the new people in.
Mhm.
And I think, and you just said it right there, we as a collective, we are not enough viewership to put archery on a financial platform like other sports are. We're just not. I don't even play golf, but I love to watch it. I love to watch golf.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah,
I
they
love
do
it,
it.
but I don't play it. But I would
Well,
never, but I wouldn't pay to watch it.
yeah, yeah, if it was behind the paywall, yeah. So that's a challenge. I mean, and it's not new. It's been around for archery's been around. There, our challenge of how do we increase our popularity, which, yeah, it's important, but I think how do we attract more archers is more important. So that's happens at the grassroots levels, and I've got some ideas. I just talking to a country about what they're doing and how they're developing archery in their country. And then I think it's what product, when you go back to the product, the television images or the images, what product can we produce that might be more desirable to be consumed by us and by the people that don't know archery or aren't archers but want to get hooked on it. F1's a good example, right? F1 did a great the Drive to Survive here in the US, right? They did a great job of getting people in the US interested in watching Formula One. 5 years ago there wasn't much Formula One we'll watch. Now it's pretty popular
Right.
because they sold the kind of the whole story of the sport, not just how fast everybody's going in every corner.
Right. You're not wrong. You're not wrong there. So, all right. So you and I had kind of discussed this in the previous one, but it did come up again multiple times. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to explain this as well. Conflict of interest and governance.
Ah.
As the owner and shareholder of one of the largest companies in the archery industry, how will you ensure a clear separation between your commercial interests and your responsibilities as president of World Archery?
Uh, Fair question. Something that came up a lot. You're right. Even as I was trying to get my nomination qualified. So, uh, having a conflict of interest is not unusual. I think many people, when they really think about it, even all the way up to the IOC level, have conflicts. They disclose them. And really, having a potential conflict of interest is not the issue. It's not the disqualifying event. It's how you handle them.
Hmm,
It you what they call is recuse yourself and to say, look, and I'm not involved with that discussion is how you do it. I've done that. I did that one time when I was on the World Archery Board. An issue came up. I was involved for a little bit, but when it became an issue between the companies and World Archery, I recused myself. I said, look, I'm on the board. I shouldn't be fighting both sides or the other side of this issue, whatever side I was going to fall on. And I had to do it again one time, kind of for the same reason. It was just like, they're going to get to hear talking about something that may be perceived as a benefit to me or benefit somehow to the companies, and I'm going to recuse myself. So having a conflict isn't really the issue, it's how you handle them.
sure.
And you handle them with integrity, you handle them with openness or clarity, whatever it is, and say, look, here's the conflict and here's where it is. There's very, you know, practically there's very few that come up. We so when they do come up, it really has to do with if somebody's trying to buy equipment and wants a favor for some reason. I'm like, like I can't do that. The
Right.
other advantage I have is I've got, as I said earlier, I put together good teams that run organizations for me. I've got a president running each company. I've got somebody at the holding company, which is actually what I own is the holding company. Um, that I have a CEO there who his day-to-day job is managing those guys. So I'm
Right.
kind of far enough away from the day-to-day stuff that I can avoid that. It would really be something bigger and more strategic in nature that I'd have to say, look, I don't want to be involved with that decision, even if it comes down to how those companies want to sponsor or not sponsor World Archery. And say, look, I can't be in the middle of negotiating that contract with you. So you guys decide what works for the business. Because I've hired that guy to run the business, not to do if I hired him just to do what I wanted to do, I should just be doing it. So they need to run the business for me.
Oh, you're not wrong. And I mean, look, I can attest to Greg's credit, and I said this on the last podcast. Look at the ATA. He has a president for Easton and a president for Hoyt, and he'd let them make the decisions for the companies themselves. And are you trying to tell me that Greg Easton is not actually reviewing shooting staff resumes? Is that what you're trying to say? Like you're not sifting through hundreds of resumes to approve like a dozen
Now,
free arrows,
now that I have an AI bot to do it, it's a lot easier.
right? You're like Bruce Almighty, Control Alt, yes to all. But anyway, no, that's no, and I agree. And I think you're right. I think dealing with any conflict of interest with honesty
Mhm.
and communication is what it's all about. Um, so here's one that is, and I'm not familiar with this necessarily, but does Greg genuinely believe he can change the current world archery internal culture? I,
Uh,
I
hmm.
mean, I don't know enough about that to say. So I got
Um, I mean, yes, that part of why I'm doing it. If I didn't think I could change the culture, and they've changed. What they say about culture is you either have a culture that you manage, or you have a culture. A culture exists either intentionally or unintentionally, and I think with intention we can have a better culture.
absolutely. I'll just write that one down after I post this and go back and take a look at that. So in 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 your opinion, how do you think that you and World Archery, and I guess all of us as a collective, how can we get archery to take a more predominant stance on the global stage? Like, look, don't talk to me about archery being like soccer. Archery's never going to be like soccer. Be real. But what do you think that we can do to get archery to start raising up some levels just in the overall global vision of how sports are perceived?
Yeah, no, I mean it's again an age-old question, right? How do we get archery to grow and be more uh more like soccer? If it's more the prestige and the image standpoint, I think actually we've in the kind of the IOC level and that sort of stuff, they've done a good job. I don't criticize where we are in that program. And what else can we do to become more, relevant in that world? I think it's continued. We talked about earlier, how do we progress the sport, right? How do we do things that keeps it relevant and interesting for people? Archery's tough from a standpoint of I think it's hard for people to understand how hard it is what those archers are doing.
Right.
That they shot a few arrows in summer camp and they hit the gold a few times and they think, hey, this is pretty easy. And so, yeah, I watch a little bit, but it's not that interesting. So trying to promote promote the athlete themselves, promote more the challenges we have and how difficult it is. There's ways to sort of help people appreciate it better. And then I think and the other end is really the grassroots, getting more people involved with the sport, not to develop, because we want more archers in the competitive world, but because archery is useful for people, especially in this day and age with distractions and social media and electronic devices, that focus, the concentration that we have to go through to execute a good shot is a skill that not as many kids have as they should these days.
Sure.
And if we can figure out a way to promote the fact that this can help your kid do better in school and be more focused, perhaps we can develop also from the ground level of an appreciation for the sport.
Absolutely. And I mean, this is one thing that you and I have talked about before, and I've made this example a lot of times. It's like the NFL Super Bowl, their product is not football. The product they're selling is viewership. And
Hmm.
if there was 100 people watching the Super Bowl, they would sell no commercials. But there's 100 million people watching the Super Bowl, so a commercial for 30 seconds costs $2 million. And so if we apply that to archery, that basically the product that we put out is to recruit the product that we're going to sell, which is views. And so and I can remember watching the Olympics on our phone during the NFAA Outdoor Nationals in Mechanicsburg, PA back in 2012.
Mhm.
Everybody was surrounded, and that was the first year that there was really the streaming effect. And even NBC Sports came out and said, we were kind of shocked to see how many people watched the archery on the stream.
Yeah.
So, so you understand this. You also understand, like we've said, emerging companies as far as skill. But I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts on emerging markets for viewers. We know that India is not kind of, India has opened up. We know that China's kind of opened up. And so talk a little bit, and look, America is America, France is France. We we're in. You don't have to sell a lot of these countries. We're going to watch. But as it pertains to these emerging viewership markets, talk a little bit about your opinion on how those will play a role into archery kind of getting to that next level.
Hmm. Oh no, it's a good, interesting multi-level question there. The viewership in the national or local level is also driven in a lot of countries by that one breakout star, right? The Marcus from Brazil. Brazil's still pretty popular and big on archery because he was able to be successful and bring that home to his country.
Right.
The problem is how do you find that in another country, a country that's further behind on the development level of how advanced they are. So trying to get it locally more relevant. Yeah, I think it again comes back to is there a way for us, as we talked about earlier, the round robin round and or more matches versus a ranking round. Um, if you could televise certain parts of that, even those matches, So a country could have some viewer of their, even though they maybe didn't make it to the final, but they made it how many steps through the match elimination
Right.
would be useful to, help promote that sport over there. So you could have, have the streaming setup on a target or two on this, which was the ranking round field, but now is a match play field
Right.
uh, to create those images so then they can push them back to their country. Probably not live because you'd want to, cut that up and put it together in the right kind of package.
Yeah.
But, shortly after the event, something's pushed out that say, here's all the highlights and what you need to know from this event.
Oh, absolutely. No, and I agree. And that's something that I don't think a lot of people necessarily think about is that the product that we're going to sell to bring in the Fords and the Deltas and the Teslas or Tide, doesn't really matter. That's the number of viewers we have. And as it comes to the Olympics, I can tell you people right now what will help Greg Easton push archery further into the Olympics, compound, recurve, archery, period. What's going to help Greg further that agenda in the Olympics is more viewers than NBC knows what to do with.
Yeah.
That's what'll do it. It's not, Greg's not going to be able to write a check. The guy from Hyundai is not going to be able to write a check.
Nope.
Nobody's going to be able to write a check to convince the IOC that archery needs to get more. They're going to have to see the check through their viewership.
Well, it's all about the eyeballs, they say, or the attention. And going back to your thing about UFC for a minute, you said it'll now be free. It's not really free.
Right.
What are you paying?
You are.
You are the product. They are buying your attention. So that's what they want. That's what the social media people want. That's what everybody's doing. Your attention, paying attention to their sport because of because they want the advertisers. So you got to figure out how do you get more people to pay attention and want to watch? You got to give a product that they're going to want to consume.
Look, folks, you guys have no idea how happy I am. Greg Poole, you have no idea how happy I am doing what I've done in my career to hear someone in Greg Easton's position speak with that level of understanding. That's not common. That's why I want Greg to win the presidency of World Archery. So last question I have for you. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today on this. This question's from me, by the way. So,
Oh,
um, and this should be a straight connect the dots thing. For you and me, it's going to be simple, but explain to people out there how the health and the growth of world archery helps archery manufacturers and the industry, not just domestically, not just Hoyt and Easton, but every archery manufacturer in the world. Yeah, all of them. How world archery doing better and how archery doing better on the global stage helps the industry.
all right. Well, I'll try to connect those dots. As If you start from the Olympic level, if you want to, because that's where a lot of funding from World Archery comes from. Olympic level, the better we do at that program, we can move up a group, we can get a better slice of the revenue. What World Archery can do more of is share more of that with the member associations from a development standpoint. So basically help, as I say to the member associations, the way for World Archery to really grow is for the member association to grow. So how can we help you grow? Figure out what you need in your country, coaching, equipment, whatever it is, so that you can grow your participation in the sport. That grows our sport. It grows the prestige we're talking about, the recognition, but also that's if you want to get all the way to manufacturers, you got more people shooting. That's what would help a manufacturer. So
Exactly.
whether as long as yeah. So wherever you are in that manufacturing world, having more people shoot, if World Archery can help the member associations grow the sport in their country, I think that's connecting the dots right there.
That's exactly connecting the dots, but it's kind of shocking to me how many people don't necessarily make that connection. And so I just wanted you to basically speak on that. Look, I got two words for you, whether you like it or not. Hunger Games. You
Yep,
you may hate Hollywood, but Hunger Games sold a lot of product.
I did. Yeah, I
And
had a lot of people interested. I mean, you hear that in the US, you hear that around the, I met somebody, Actually, yeah. Somebody the other day said they were at an archery center and the person showing them how to shoot, they asked her, how'd you get involved with archery? And had the whole story. And it was the Hunger Games and that she got involved in it. Now her parents are involved, changed her life because but that's what got them involved. And it literally, people, oh, no, it doesn't, it happens.
Yep.
Yeah. It'd be nice if it happened on a bigger scale, but yes, it did sell a lot of product, probably kept a lot of bow shops busy when mom would come in saying, my daughter wants to have her birthday here. We want a Hunger Games birthday party. So,
Right. That's right. Well, all right, Greg, I appreciate it. Is there anything else? I mean, that's basically the gist of all of the questions. I mean,
yeah.
there was some redundancy in questions, so I just kind of combined them with other topics. But is
Well,
there
I
anything?
think, just thank you for, making the call out to get those questions. Thanks everybody who, has enough interest to participate. If nothing else, that's what I know, I've known, but, kind of was reinforced through all these efforts that are there. Lots of great people in archery. A lot of these small countries are volunteers and they're taking money out of their own pockets to try to get their athletes to an event. And I really respect that and realize that one of the reasons I'm doing this is I think it's one way I can give back to this sport that's done great things for me in my life and try to help improve other even more people's lives hopefully through archery.
All right, there we go, folks. That's Greg Easton. If you're new to archery, just Google it. If you've been in archery for a while, you know that Greg's efforts, his family's efforts, have been paramount in getting the sport to where it is now. And so, Greg, following in his father's footsteps and becoming president of World Archery, I think is absolutely the step we need. Not just and look, like he said, Greg's not a Greg is not going to come in there and say he has all the answers. He's going to bring a squad with him. And if he doesn't have an answer, he's going to turn to somebody in his squad and he's going to be like, you are the guy that knows this. What's the deal? And that is the kind of leadership that I believe we need, not just in world archery, but in archery, period. And so getting Greg into that position, especially in this time of archery, 2025, those of us that have been around a while, you've seen the peaks, you've seen the valleys, you've seen the 2020 and 21, 22. You've seen it all. We've seen the ups and the downs. And right now in 2025, with compounds getting their foot in the door, we are on the precipice of some pretty incredible things. And not to use the Hunger Games as too much of an example, but it's my personal opinion that we didn't quite hold on to that momentum and maximize that opportunity as good as we could have as an industry. It's my personal opinion that I think Greg is the right guy to put in control of world archery so that he can put his people in place to execute on the directions that him and his team and the other people he's going to get input from think is the right direction. So that's going to be it for the podcast today, folks. Greg, when is the vote, by the way? I don't even.
Vote is September 3rd, which will actually be the evening of the 2nd here in the US. So depending on
Okay.
where you are in the world, but
All right,
so
there we go. So
coming up.
there you go. So September 2nd/3rd. I'll post it on Bow Junkie as soon as we can, one way or another. But I certainly wish Greg the best. I am excited for the opportunity to see what he can do in there. And even Greg knows and Greg admits nobody's perfect. Nobody bats 1,000, but it's all about the honesty, the integrity, and the effort. And I am convinced with every fiber of my being that Greg will do everything he can in that regard. Not for himself, because what's Greg going to do? Like, Greg's pretty set. He doesn't even have to do this. He's doing this for the love of the sport. So for that, I give him a lot of my respect. That's going to be it for the podcast today, folks. It's really hot right now out there, not counting the 118.5 where the World Games was. But if you're out there doing any outdoor activities this week, please hydrate, not just water. You need electrolytes. You need everything you can, no matter what you're doing outside. If it's super hot, just please take care of yourself. You guys know the drill. We want to hear from you, not about you. And as always, everybody, love, peace, and chicken grease.